Hi! I'm getting ready to string this racket for the 6th time, and I hope it's my last. Yep, it's another experiment. Alright, let's get into it. As usual, it was my curiosity that led to this experiment, and what I'm testing for is if the machine pulling speed, the tension head pulling speed, makes a difference on the actual string job in the end. So most constant pull machines have the option of setting it from a slower to a medium to a fast speed. In the case of my machine, the Babolat Evolution Tour, I have settings that start from 1 being the slowest and up to 5. So what I did on these first 2 rackets that I'm stringing, it's both on a Prince Phantom 97P, and I'm using Prince Synthetic Gut 16 gauge at 50 pounds. So what I did is I set 1 at 1 and 1 at 5 in terms of pulling speed. Then I logged down the actual stringing time that it took me to complete the racket. And then I took readings using the RDC and the ERT 300. So after I strung those 2 rackets, well, it was actually the same racket that I strung twice. I cut the strings and I strung these 2 rackets with a polyester string. So I have the Luxilon Original Big Banger 130. I kept the tension at 50, and again I set one setting at 1 and the other one at 5. I logged down the stringing time, the RDC, and the ERT 300 readings. Alright, I completed the last racket, so what I'm going to do is take the readings on the RDC and the ERT 300. So like I've done in previous videos, when I take the string bed deflection, I want to make sure I center it in the string bed. So in this case I have a racket that has 18 crosses, so what I'm doing is I centered it between the 9th and the 10th cross. And let's say if I got a reading of 49, I'll do it 3 times, or 2 or 3 times. So the second one is, okay, so this one's coming in at 50. So I have 49 and 50. And what I'll do is I'll take a 3rd reading. And whichever this reading matches up to, that's the number that I'll go with. So on this last one is 49. So I'll go ahead and log that in for my reading on the RDC. And then next on the ERT, what I'm going to do is place the bottom claw of this ERT on the 9th main, on the top of the 9th main. And that's how I center mine. So I'm going to go 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 right there. And that's how I ensure that it's always centered and I'm always placing it in the same place no matter what racket it is. If it's an 18 by 20, then I would put it on the top of the 10th cross. Alright, so I have a DT reading right there, so I'm going to go ahead and log this in and we'll take a look at the readings next. Alright, so here are the readings, and with the first 2 that I strung, Prince Synthetic Gut 16, reference tension at 50, I started off with the machine pulling at the number 5 speed, which was the fastest that the machine can pull. Stringing time at 13.29 seconds. The RDC string bed deflection reading came out to 50. The ERT 300 at 32 DT and 47 pounds. So when I did the second stringing, I reset the pulling speed to 1. I thought it would be interesting to find out what is the difference in time between a 1 and a 5. So when I did the 1, it did the pull in 2.73 seconds on an average. So, and then I took the number 5 speed and it did it in 2.68. So the difference between these 2 pulls at 50 pounds with Prince Synthetic Gut was 0.05 seconds. So that's not very much difference really. What I thought was interesting though, even though this was at the slower pulling speed, my stringing time was faster. So I don't know how that happened because I tried to string both rackets as quickly as I could. The RDC reading came out higher, which does make sense because if you're pulling at a slightly slower speed, you would think that the strings are stretching out. So that came out higher. So on the ERT 300 reading, you'll see that it also shows that it came out a little bit higher, from 32 to 33 and from 47 to 48. So let's take a look at the second stringing that I did, or the third and fourth stringing that I did. And this is with the Luxilon Big Banger 130. And so what I did is I reversed the order. So I did the pulling speed 1 first. I wanted to see if that would make a difference. So I did it 13 minutes, 59 seconds. I got a 48 here, and then 30 DT and 44 here. So when I did the faster of the two, the 5, again, I timed the pull because I was curious to find out if it makes a difference, if it's polyester versus synthetic. So what I found was that when I set it at 5, it reached the reference tension in 2.34 seconds. And when I did it at 1, it came out in 2.49. And again, this was an average. I did about 5 strings and I averaged it out. So the difference between these two now was 0.15 seconds, whereas the synthetic gut was only 0.05. So it came out a little bit more, but you can see that the second stringing, I did a little bit faster. So maybe that made a difference, that it did pull that much quicker, the 0.15 seconds. However, the RDC string bed deflection reading came out the same here, and so did the ERT readings right here. So what I did is I thought it would be interesting to combine these two strings, and what I did is I created a hybrid to see how these two strings behave together and what it would do with the reading. So I have, so what I did is I just made the Big Banger the mains, and I strung that at 48 and did the Prince Synthetic Gut at 50. Again, I reversed the order, and I started with the number 5. I didn't take any time. I didn't time the pulls on this one, but I did that in 1438, 50 here, and then you can see the ERT 300 readings here. So when I did the second one at the 1, I did string it faster, quite a bit faster. Maybe I was getting more warmed up, but on the RDC reading, it came out 1 unit lower. However, on the ERT reading, it came out exactly the same. So when I'm looking at these numbers right now, what seems to make the most sense is that maybe the Prince Synthetic Gut is more affected by the pulling speed, because that's where you can see that there was a big difference, or 3 unit difference here, along with the ERT 300. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna string this racket for the 5th and the 6th time. I'm sorry, 7th and 8th time, and it is getting late. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come back tomorrow and string it up and see what kind of readings we get with the next string. All right, back again. So you may have guessed what I decided to string up these two rackets. Well, this one racket with the 2 stringings is a multi-filament, and I went with the Prince Premier Control 16 gauge. So I set up everything the same as I did yesterday. So we'll take a look at the readings after I finish this racket in about 3 seconds. All right, so on this bottom row is the racket I just strung with the multi-filament, the Prince Premier Control 16. And I picked a multi-filament because I was curious if maybe a multi-filament might be more sensitive to a lower pulling speed. So on this racket here that I strung first, it came out with 55 on the RDC reading. But when I pulled this one at 5, it actually came out higher at 56, just 1 unit. The ERT 300 reading was exactly the same here. Now let's take a look at the stringing time. And again, I went faster on the second racket, but only by 0.03 of a second. So that's not really that much of a difference. So when I'm looking at this, now I'm questioning why this happened over here. So what I'm gonna do, and this will be the last time, I'm gonna string the racket a 9th and a 10th time, again with the Prince Synthetic Gut 16, and we'll see if we get similar readings like we did on this first 2 stringings. All right, let's take a look at this bottom 2 rows, and this is the racket that I just strung, and I did the print synthetic gut 16. I don't know if it made a difference, but on this first 2 stringings here, I was using a platinum color and I ran out, so I had to use the red color here. But again, I did the 1 and the 5. Now on this, the stringing time, I actually did it faster on the first one, so I'm thinking maybe I got tired by the 10th racket, so this one was a little bit longer in terms of time. Now let's take a look at the RDC reading, and the second one came out higher. Again, at the top here, when we took a look at the pulling speed, it was the 1 that came out higher, but now it's the 5 that's a little bit higher, just by 1 unit though. And the ERT 300 reading is exactly the same. So I don't know what happened here, but there is a range between 50 to 53, and then these fell right in between that. So it might have been the color, it might have been whatever it was. What I can conclude from this is that pulling at a speed, whether it's a 1 or a 5, in the case of my machine, it doesn't really make that much difference in terms of the string bed deflection and the ERT 300 reading. In summary, I'd like to add that not all stringing machines pull at the same speed. In fact, if you'd like to conduct this experiment, I'd love to hear from you. All you need is a racket, and I would recommend stringing the same racket twice. Of course, you need 2 sets of strings, and you don't have to string it 10 times like I did. What you would need though is, you don't need an RDC, but if you have an ERT 300, then you can track the DT and the string tension. Now, the other reason why you might need a lower stringing speed is for a couple of reasons. One, if you ever work with Ashaway Monogut ZX Pro, it's a Zyx string that's very sensitive to the pull speed. So this is one string that it does actually recommend that you set your tension head to the lowest setting. The second reason that I experienced, and I heard of other stringers, is at a pro tournament once I had a player that was breaking her strings really quickly. I think it was actually a defective reel, but what I did to remedy that situation, since she had no other strings, is that I did set my machine, my Prince machine at the time, to the lowest pull speed, and that seemed to help. I did have to modify how I started the mains also, but yeah, I've heard of other stringers that have done the same, where they experience a breakage and then they lowered the pulling speed, and that seemed to help. So hopefully this was helpful, and I hope you enjoyed my experiment. Thanks for watching, happy stringing, and let your strings play.